Hi, everyone. My name is Adam Smedberg, and I want to welcome you to our December live stream program. These are monthly programs that allow us to highlight some of the different programs that Church World Service is involved with, not only domestically here in the United States, but programs all over the globe. And we'd love to hear from you. Give us a shout in the chat. If you like what you hear today, drop us a like, share this video on your social media platforms. So your friends and family can see what else we're up to. We're really glad today to be joined by Tiffany Nelms. Tiffany is the Director of Home Study and Post-Release Services here at Church World Service. And we're going to be talking about this work that Church World Service has been doing with unaccompanied minors. And so Tiffany, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
So let me get started. Let's just start by setting up kind of a general group we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about unaccompanied minors. How do children become declared an unaccompanied minor, and how does this process work? If you don't mind just letting us know.
Sure. So unaccompanied minors are children of any age under 18 that arrive to the U.S., typically at the U.S.-Mexico border, not in the company of a parent or guardian, and without legal status to enter. The majority of unaccompanied minors historically have been from Central America, so we're talking about El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala. But of course, we see children from all over the world, and including an increase in children coming from Afghanistan with the fall of the Afghan government in August. Several thousand unaccompanied Afghan kids came to the U.S. and are also being, some of them, served by CWS. Again, ages range. We see kids as young as a few days old come into government custody at the border to 17. The majority of the kids that we work with are older, 14 to 17-year-olds. About 65% are male. So that's the general profile. And once the children are detained at the border, within 72 hours, they typically are transferred to a residential program, a facility contracted by the Office of Refugee Resettlement, where they will remain until the next step is identified, and whether that's reunification with a relative or returning to home country or staying longer term if they don't have any reunification options in an ORR funded program.
Just to kind of, that's amazing. A couple days old, all the way up to 17. Are these children coming in by themselves? Are they coming with groups of siblings or cousins? Like, if you have cousins, are they allowed to stay together, or do they get separated? How does that work?
Yeah, good question. It varies. We see children traveling in groups. Sometimes they have been with a relative and gotten separated, or they've been, potentially in their home country, they don't have parents, and so they traveled with someone who was a primary caregiver but not recognized as a legal guardian once they arrive to the border and then are separated. And that's another important point of why kids would come to the U.S. unaccompanied, and we refer to those as push and pull factors, so things that would push a child from their home, community and or gang violence, natural disasters, the impact of climate change, abuse, lack of protection from abuse, lack of a primary caregiver, in the case of, abandonment or death of their parents. And then the pull factors, looking for safety, seeking reunification with a parent or other relative, and educational and employment opportunities that are lacking in their country of origin. And children, travel under many circumstances. It could be with someone who is smuggling people into the U.S. or attempting that, which is obviously a risk. And people say, how could you leave your small child with a smuggler? Well, if the situation in their home country is so desperate, or their safety is at risk, often that is their best option. So there has been movement recently if a child is part of a family unit, even if it's not a parent or legal guardian, that potentially that separation may not occur. But historically, kids have been separated at the border. If they traveled with a grandmother, for example, who's been their primary caregiver, in the situation where perhaps the parents are deceased, that they historically would have been separated and then placed into this system of unaccompanied minors, where they would be in a government-funded facility until reunification with someone could occur. But lately, there has been movement to try to preserve those contacts when possible, and also efforts to keep, if children are traveling together with cousins or other unaccompanied minors, that they're placed in the same facility so that it's less traumatic for the children.
Yeah, I can only imagine the trauma that, I try to think back to myself when I was a child, and things I would get yelled at just for trying to cross the street on us, so I can only imagine what these children are going through trying to come here and being separated from family, or the situation that they're going through. Now, is this work limited to just children coming into the United States, or is this, part of CWS's kind of international programs with, we're seeing migrants from Ukraine or other countries. You mentioned Afghanistan before. Is there programs similar being set up in those areas where we're seeing refugees and immigrants moving and crossing borders?
Yeah, good question. I mean, certainly CWS has an impact globally with children who are separated or unaccompanied because of war or persecution. As you mentioned, the unaccompanied Ukrainian children. Recently, CWS did a deployment to Moldova where many unaccompanied children have been relocated. The same with providing support to unaccompanied Afghan children. Our program specifically works with children who are unaccompanied in the United States, providing support when they're released from government custody to a relative or family friend. We refer to that as post-release services, so that we can monitor the placement, ensure their safety, ensure their access to resources, that they're supported in that process of building real, authentic connections in their community, that they're enrolled in school, have access to medical services, those kinds of things. And that our scope really in this program is limited to unaccompanied children in the U.S.
Okay. And my understanding is that in 2021, it was more than 100,000 unaccompanied children sought refuge in the U.S. Is that number correct?
Yes, you're correct.
Okay.
And we expect similar numbers. We've seen similar numbers already in 2022 and in 2023.
Okay. And now these children, coming here, they will have, many of them will have sponsors or family already here that they are in looking to, you were saying reunification, I think was the term you used, uniting with their family. So for the majority, they do have that connection here, correct?
Many kids do have a connection. Many don't. They're simply seeking safety, and sometimes that's their goal, to flee their country of origin and then arrive somewhere safe, and then whatever happens next, they're open to. But a lot of kids do have a family connection here, and many will pursue asylum or other forms of legal relief. And being reunified with a relative doesn't mean that they remain in the U.S. It means that until a decision is made on their immigration case, they don't have to be in immigration custody. They can live with their family in the community and receive the support they need to navigate that process. And sometimes that's counseling, sometimes that's advocacy to obtain an immigration attorney, because children are not guaranteed representation in immigration court. It's really up to the child and or their family to secure legal services. And so while we understand that every child has that their case has a legal remedy, we don't want a child to be returned to an unsafe situation because they didn't have access to an immigration attorney.
I find that absolutely mind blowing that you having children who have no right to representation, and I can only imagine, the trauma that these children have already gone through, and then to be told, okay, now you're going to go in front of a judge as as a young child without any legal representation to plead your case. I just find it absolutely mind blowing and boggled by that. So we're going to throw up a story here in just a second in the chat. Nirvana's story. I know she and her dog, and I think it was her brother, were coming over. And you'll get a chance if you want to read that story and learn more about what they were going through and how her dog, they got separated from her dog at the border. Her dog really helped her get through the ordeal of coming here. So, Tiffany, I want to talk about something that happened last year. I know in this impacted me quite a bit because I used to live in Kentucky, but I know last year in December, Kentucky and several other states were hit by several tornadoes. And we know CWS was able to respond in the disaster relief response, with our buckets and our blankets to support communities that were hit. But you guys also stepped in to help as well. Can you talk a little bit about that, please?
Sure. We recognize the challenging situations that unaccompanied children can often find themselves in once they arrive to the U.S. As you mentioned, the trauma of whatever motivated them to come to the U.S. They're dealing with that. They're dealing with being adjusting to new culture, traditions, language, community, weather. There's a lot, and you can imagine yourself in that same situation at 9, 10, 11, 12, 15, which is a difficult time for young people in general. How important it is to have support. And that's really the function of our post-release program, is to journey with kids when they've been reunited and need that level of support, and that their caregiver needs someone to kind of guide them in accessing the resources that they may need and supporting the child's adjustment. And with the tornado in Kentucky in December 2021, you can imagine how something like that exacerbates that pre-existing trauma. We had families who, the adults had not been in Kentucky long and didn't know that what a tornado was, or that one was coming, until it was basically on top of them. So you imagine adding that kind of trauma from a natural disaster on top of what they were already working through. And so we deployed a team to Kentucky in January, unaccompanied kids that had been reunified for some time, and because of capacity limitations in this network, had not yet been assigned a social worker. And we were able to identify 44 kids that had been waiting for services, and sent a team in January. Some of them we couldn't even reach on the phone. And social workers with the address in hand went to find the last known location. Certainly we waited until, a few weeks until the rescue and recovery was, initial stage was complete, and it was safe for our staff to go. We didn't want to be in the way, but often non-English speakers, newcomers, number one, they're not aware of the resources that might be available in the aftermath of a disaster. They're potentially fearful of accessing them because the adults themselves may not have a permanent legal status. And so, we thought that it was really important that we provide that level of assistance. And that's very much what we saw. the community that was most impacted is fairly rural with limited resources for immigrants to begin with. And so people were really disoriented, and the affordable housing stock in the community that was hardest hit in Mayfield was already very limited. So we saw people who before the tornado may have been living 2 or 3 families in a 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom house. After the tornado, maybe 3 or 4 households were combined into one person's home that was the only home that was still standing after the tornado. So, and in the year since, we've maintained close communication with a lot of those families through a generous grant from the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. We were able to also to complement the case management services that we typically provide with some financial assistance. Many of these families, because of their legal status, they're not eligible for government assistance in response to the disaster. So to date, we've distributed about $45,000 to 33 families. And, within those families, certainly there's the client that we were serving, but they have other children, other adults. So the impact was, significant. We saw people using that money to repair roofs, to buy basic necessities and supplies, people who lost their employment. Their place of employment no longer existed. It was destroyed. One of our clients was actually rescued from a factory that collapsed in the tornadoes, to providing that emotional support, connection to mental health services was also really critical.
Wow, just a lot of different areas that were addressed there. So thank you for that. I want to just throw in a quick question from the chat here. Roberta Smith asks, she says, thanks for the great work your team is doing. Can you share with us with how your team partners with members of the faith community to address the needs of unaccompanied minors who may or may not have a family member in the U.S.?
Great question. So I guess I'll give 2 answers here. One is that recognizing that our staff, we don't have local staff in Mayfield, for example, where we've deployed teams many times since the tornado in December. And obviously it's really important that we know who the players are there locally, partner, provide support, know what resources our clients can access locally. It's really important, obviously, that they're connected locally as well. So we did a lot of legwork in the beginning to figure out what pantries, what shelters, and a lot of these resources were connected to faith communities. And it was just a matter of people knowing that they were there, where to go. In a few cases, actually taking them there, showing them when our caseworker was there on the ground. Faith communities, I would say in general across the country, work with and support unaccompanied kids in a variety of ways. There are volunteer opportunities at some shelters because the government is obligated to provide access to the faith community of their choice. And then through various initiatives, mentoring, teaching ESL. We have a vast network of CWS locations and partners across the country that offer programs and services that are also available to unaccompanied children. And those are just a few, the ESL. We collect school supplies and backpacks for unaccompanied kids who have recently arrived with a sponsor, and that might present a financial hardship. So certainly faith communities help with collecting material goods. Just a few examples.
Wonderful. And we got another comment here from Courtney. She says, so thankful for CWS and the caring and thoughtful response to the most vulnerable in Kentucky. So thank you for that, Courtney. I want to just talk real quick. We've got a great audience here watching. What are some things that our audience can do to support the home study and post-release program? Sorry, I had to make sure I had the words in the right areas. But what are some things that our audience can do to to do to help out as well?
Yeah, great question. So this program is funded by the Office of Refugee Resettlement. It covers the professional service, the case management, the linkage to resources, visiting children in their home. But we're not able to provide any kind of financial assistance. That's where we really work to connect with other service providers in their local community that may be able to meet some of those unmet material needs. And that could be food pantries, Salvation Army, clothing closets, things like that. There are sometimes financial needs that cannot be met by a local resource, but are really critical. And in this case, for example, um, someone who is undocumented or doesn't have status yet, and their roof has been destroyed in a tornado, and they're not eligible for government assistance. Um, the grant that we received shortly after the tornado helped this family repair the only place they had to live. So we're always in need of donations to meet those kinds of unmet and sometimes unanticipated needs. You can volunteer at your local CWS if there is one, and you can email us at welcomingchildren@cwsglobal.org to find out where the CWS closest to you is, or one of our partners. And then you can follow us for advocacy opportunities. We have an action alert right now urging the Biden administration to extend additional efforts to welcome and protect unaccompanied minors, and also sign up for our CWS monthly newsletter that provides updates on many of our programs, including the Unaccompanied Children's program, opportunities to get involved.
Great. We got two other quick comments I want to just cue in here from the chat. The first is from Max. We'd love to continue helping CWS here in Southeast Florida. Thank you for that, Max. In the past, we've helped host at various community fairs at the CWS booths and offer welcoming programs. We are a team of artists, attorneys, business owners, etc. Please let us know how we can be of service to our refugee community. So I think, the email address we had up before, Max, if you want to reach out to them, I think they would be able to help out and get back to you on that. Anything you want to add to that one, Tiffany, or?
Yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, these unaccompanied kids are part of our local communities, right? And we're always really encouraged by community members wanting to be part of that welcome. This isn't just something that social workers can and should do. It's all of us. So we appreciate your commitment to being part of that.
Absolutely. And we got one more other here from Bianca. She asked, Tiffany, can you speak a little bit about the legal challenges these children face?
Sure. So as I mentioned, these children, when they're reunified with a relative, family friend that the government refers to as a sponsor, it's really just acknowledging that the child doesn't need to be to remain detained until a decision is made on their immigration case. So they leave government custody, could live in the community with their sponsor for 6 months to 5 years. I mean, some of these cases take a really long time to resolve. And that they can stay with their sponsor until a decision is made. The challenge that almost all of our children have is that pro bono, low bono legal service providers are really stretched and often don't have the capacity to provide legal representation, or there are very long wait lists. And children either go unrepresented because often their families are in a difficult financial situation and they can't afford a private attorney. And private attorneys can charge upwards of $10,000 for an asylum case. And so where does someone come up with that kind of money? It's difficult. And it's not like somebody could be appointed a public defender, right? That doesn't happen in immigration and federal immigration court. So it's really up to the family to offer that resource. And depending on the jurisdiction, I mean, you can look online and find decisions by judge, and some of these judges have 90+% denial rate, and you can imagine how not having an attorney to represent you impacts the outcome of your case. And whether you have an attorney or not, the case will move forward. So that's really one of our biggest challenges. And, we're working with kids to heal from past trauma, settle in the US, adapt to their new home, they feel like they belong in school and in the community. And if we can't also come to the table with this legal resource, if they're looking at being deported back to the same situation that they fled because they didn't have access to a viable, affordable legal resource, obviously that's a situation we want to avoid.
Thank you for that. And thank you for your time today. I know how difficult of a topic this can be. And so we appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today and kind of giving everyone a peek inside of what's CWS is involved with these children and helping them through the path that they are going through. If you liked what you saw today, please hit that like button. Hit the share button so your friends and family members can also check out this video. But don't click away. We've got a special video here highlighting a few students, children who have come in. So we hope you'll stick around and watch the video with us. And then next year, 2022 is coming to an end here. It's been a great year doing these programs and sharing this work with you, our audience. And we hope you'll join us in 2023. We're working on a great schedule, and we'll hopefully be announcing that here shortly. But Tiffany, thank you again so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. And thanks to everybody for being here with us and participating today.
Thank you all. And we hope you have a safe and wonderful holiday season. And we'll hope you'll stick around and watch this video with us.
Para uno de mujer es feo, porque lo molestan demasiado, cuando usted quiera que va, pues lo acosan a uno demasiado y no puede salir uno a la calle porque ya están los hombres molestándolo.
Sí, cuando yo era pequeño ahí, porque no tenía nada y mi mamá y mi papá estaban enfermos. Cuando yo era pequeño, ellos estaban enfermos. Y cuando yo era pequeño, ellos se fue con otro, mi familia. Mi familia tiene familia también. Ellos me dejaron en la casa solito. Y ahí empecé a trabajar. Y hay veces encontró trabajo, hay veces no, hay veces yo comí una vez al día, hay veces no. Sí, porque ahí no, hay veces salió trabajo, hay veces no. Porque ahí no hay nada ahí.
Estaba cerca, la frontera estaba cerca, nada más era de pasar así. Y pasamos las dos y igual lo regresaron, entonces ya de ahí pasé yo sola. Mami dice, sí, mejor pasa tú primero porque me da miedo por el riesgo que corremos nosotros también allá. Y yo si me toca regresarme, me regreso, no importa lo que me pase, dijo ella. Y pasé yo. Y bueno,
es muy duro, es muy pesado el camino así. Se sienten momentos de terrores, muchos momentos difíciles para uno.
CWS has a national program where we support children as they are leaving federal care and reuniting with their family members across the US. And so the work of our team is to assess for the safety of that placement and support with that reunification.
So the process of getting to a new country where you don't know what it's about, you are not familiar with the culture, you don't know the laws, you do not speak the language, that's a very difficult experience. That paired with not having the ability sometimes to meet your basic needs, your necessities or the services that you need is a very challenging experience.
My program is to provide the service that these kids need, including mental health, medical service, legal service, anything they need, education. We have also an adjustment support group where all the kids can share their experience and also learn coping skills to work in their daily basis.
My favorite part is basically being a first responder to these minors, being somebody who 20 years down the road they'll remember, like, hey, CWS helped me. They helped me navigate my life, they helped me settle down in a new place, and we're impacting their lives forever.
The support to be able to implement these programs that really are, life-altering when children and families are navigating their new community is something you can't put a price on.
In a lot of cases, it's a matter of I stay and I die, or I have to leave and save my life. In some cases, it's not just about living a better life, but it's about just having the right to live and being safe and protected.
They're children just like yours and mine that want to go to school. They want to play soccer in the neighborhood, and they want to live without fear. I'd want the world to know that these children are coming here because they want to be with their family, they want to be safe, and they want to have a brighter future.
They have big dreams and they are working hard to achieve them.
Quiero ser abogada, quiero estudiar eso. Y me gusta mucho la carrera.
Me parece atractivo, pues mucho mejor, porque aquí tengo más, como le digo, tengo más esperanza porque estoy estudiando, quiero sacar una carrera a ver si me gusta mucho lo de mecánico también.
Porque siento feliz aquí, porque aquí tengo mi hermana, yo siento feliz con ella y yo estoy estudiando también y aquí yo vivo feliz aquí.
Uno aquí cuando uno llega y encuentra personas así, encuentra programas así, uno siente de lo mejor porque ya siente un apoyo, siente como que tengo bastante compañía, que me ayudan bastante y sé que puedo contar el día de mañana con ustedes, igual con el programa.